Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogatz. As you know, it is Halloween week, just a couple of days away, and as we always do, it is time for a Halloween-themed podcast. Jenn Russell is here to talk with me about our favorite creepy artworks from famous artists, and we will talk about how we present them in our classroom and how we discuss them with our students. But first, I want to talk to you really briefly about the Art of Education University. If you need to just take one graduate course, if you want to earn a master's degree, or anywhere in between, make sure you check out courses from the Art of Education University. We offer over 20 online courses, including 8 hands-on studio courses, and they are designed to help art teachers at every stage of their professional career. So whether you're looking to develop a new art curriculum, get help with fundamentals in your classroom, incorporate new technology, or just brush up on your own art making skills, we have the course for you. You can see what's available, what interests you, and what you may want to sign up for at theartofeducation.edu/courses. Okay, let me bring on Jen, and we will talk some creepy artworks. All right, Jenn Russell is joining me now. Jen, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hi, good. I'm so excited to be back.
Oh, good. I'm excited to have you back. I'm excited to talk about all of our creepy artworks that we've picked out. But first, let's talk Halloween. Is this a holiday that's exciting for you? Do you go all out, or is it just kind of run-of-the-mill sort of thing for you?
Oh, no. I go all out, as much as I can in my classroom. I put little, I tend to schedule assignments around. We go through anatomy at this time so I can have skulls out, and we have
nice.
window gel clings, and my house is creepy and weird, and our neighborhood goes all out, so everybody goes all out. So I love Halloween.
That's awesome. I love it. I have 2 kids, one's 6th grade, one's 4th grade. And my daughter, who's in 6th grade, is very sad because this is her last trick-or-treating year. I told her when she gets to middle school, she doesn't get to go trick-or. No, that's me. That's me being a mean dad.
Love it.
But she's going all out. She's been reading Hunger Games, and so she's going as Katniss and made her own costume, and she's very excited. And then my son, who's in 4th grade, is just kind of weird, and he's going as an ear of corn. So
I
excited
am
about that.
With that thought, this will be my son's first cognizant Halloween. He was 3 months old last year. Had no idea what was happening, but they have trunk or treat at their preschool.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And this is the first time ever that I've ever trunk or treated, and I think I'm being a little excessive with it, but it's a contest, and I'm here to win, and I feel like I have a little bit of an advantage being an art teacher, but so it's Harry Potter themed.
Oh, I love it already.
Yeah, so I have, the Ford Anglia, the flying car, we've got wands, we've got Dementors, we've got the Quidditch towers that are framing our trunk, and my kids are like, okay, really, Russ? Do you think this is a bit much? And I was like, yeah, probably, but I don't really know. It is,
but it's also amazing.
Yeah, I don't really know any other way to live except for being excessive. So.
Oh, that's good. I've only done trunk or treat once, but I have a black car, and then I got just all sorts of, huge piping and turned it into a giant spider, these giant legs coming out all over. So we ended up taking up 3 parking spots, which people weren't happy with because the legs were so gigantic, but it looked really, really cool. So
no, that's really what it's about. And as art people, I just feel like we have an obligation to just be extra. So
Exactly. Cool. All right. So let's talk artwork. We put together a big list of artworks that are super creepy, super fun to share at this time of the year. And we'll just kind of go through them, talk about what we love, and I guess, how we talk about our kids with them. So talk about them with our kids. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. All right. So number one on our list is Van Gogh's Head of a Skeleton with a Burning Cigarette. I love this one. For those of you that don't know, it's just that solid black background, a skull, very loosely painted because, it's Van Gogh, and it's just smoking a cigarette. And I don't know, I get the greatest reaction from my kids with this. They think it's like so cool, but so funny at the same time for whatever reason. So what do you think about, like, what do your kids say when they see this?
So, like I said, I schedule anatomy around this time, and I feel bad for my spring, drawing classes that don't get anatomy around a spooky time, but that's
right.
But I do point this out, and I talk a lot about, they just think it's the epitome of cool, and then I tend to bring in, advertising, like in the 60s and how, in the 50s and 60s, and how that was what they were trying to go for, especially with like cigarette smoking, was just that it was cool. And, that it was, but they really do think that this is just super cool. And this is one of the few times that I feel a solid black background just absolutely works in a piece. That doesn't have anything going on. I mean, it doesn't even have differentiation of color. Like it's just black. Mm-hmm. It's just pure black. And then I get some, I teach high school, so I get some kiddos that are like, black like my soul. And I'm like,
oh God.
Yeah, sure. But, they love it. One of my kids is like, it's very James Dean-esque. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. So they can see people. It's almost like, an x-ray of someone they know minus the cigarette, probably, and they're like, how can we turn this into something modern? And I'm just like, let's not go there. But they absolutely love it. And then they talk about just the structure and, just the variance of color or just value that makes the biggest of difference here. Because it's very limited color options, but the value is
and that's one of the things that my kids always pick up on. They're like, seriously, this is Van Gogh? Because, we're used to flowers and these beautiful scenes and all of these fields with, blues and greens and just these beautiful colors. And then all of a sudden there's just like death personified. And it's really shocking to them that Van Gogh painted this. So that's always a good road that we go down to.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of anatomy, we need to go down a little further on our list. Rembrandt's painting, The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp, which not everybody knows the title, but I think everybody knows the painting, where it's the one guy, traditional Dutch Flemish garb, with the cadaver like laid out, and he's like cutting into the arm, and you can see all of the veins and the bones inside of the arm. And there's about a half dozen guys just sort of staring in there, and it's kind of weird at first when you first see it. You're like, okay, what's going on here? And then you look closer, and like, the cadaver's face is all like sunken in, looks really gross. Yeah. And then the arm is completely cut open. And so kids are like really quiet when they see this for the first like 30 seconds or so. And then they start to see what's going on. You just start to go, oh, gross. So like, do you have the same reaction from your kids?
And I don't know if, your kiddos are like this, but my kids think that they're surgeons because they have binge watched all, however many seasons of Grey's Anatomy that are on Netflix.
Yes.
And so they're like, they can't even do that. They can't take the bones out of the nerves. I mean, how is it that they have to peel back the skin and you need a plastic surgeon for that? I'm like, y'all, can we please pay attention to the fact that this is first of all, look at the realism here. He's teaching this obviously a surgical procedure and, in the 1600s. So
Yes.
What is that? Are we not concerned? But, they're very concerned about just the actual surgical part. And then they start to realize that none of the guys are actually looking at the arm. Like there's one that's looking at the arm, but everybody else is just looking in random places. And so they're like, wait, what are they looking at? Also, and they're like, homeboy's really short. Like, what's that about? And I'm like, thank you guys. Thank you for pointing out all the things that we need to talk about.
Yeah, well, and they're all dressed the same, and all of the guys have like the same facial hair, and it's just it's a weird pain. There's a lot to dive into on that one. So. Yeah,
and and I was like, are they looking at the book? But why isn't the book closer? Yeah. And we unpack a lot, but they're mostly concerned with the proportions in that they're slightly off of the cadaver, but and they're like, is it foreshortening because he's at an angle, so it's weird? We feel like he should be longer, or his legs should be longer, and his torso should be shorter, and the arm is weird. And I'm like, it's all just weird.
It is. It's all very weird. And I don't know. I always just tell my kids that Rembrandt was way more worried about light and shadow, so he didn't bother nearly as much with getting proportions right. So, who knows? But I'll trust Rembrandt more than Yeah, he knows
more
what
than
he's doing.
my class full of surgeons.
Yes, your wannabe surgeons. Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right. Next on the list, we would not be complete talking about creepy artworks if we did not talk about Salvador Dali. And there's obviously a lot of options here that you can go for if you're talking Dali. But I think one of his creepiest is the one called Face of War, which landscape background because, it's Dali, but then like the giant head right in the middle, and it's got two way too big eyes and, a big open mouth, and inside of those eyes are another creepy face, and inside of the eyes of that creepy face are another creepy face, and on and on and on. So yeah, it's sort of weird, sort of disturbing. The hair on the face also looks like snakes, and it's just, it's kind of a weird one. And it's another one where there's a lot to look at.
Yes. And, a very popular thing to do when they're drawing skulls or faces or eyes is that they always want to put stuff in the eye.
Yes.
And it's like their go-to for when, it's like, oh, I'm in my feelings. I'm going to put, whatever I'm going through in my eyes. And I'm just like, okay, guys, let's dig a little deeper. But, we talk about this in just the usage of the landscape, the horizon, and then you have this, again, beautiful landscape, but you can't really appreciate it because there's this thing blocking your view of all of this hard work. And then you're so just engrossed in what's happening. And this is one of, I use this as an example of something that draws your viewer in. And so sometimes you want your viewer to look at your piece from afar, and sometimes you want them closer. And so I use this as an example of a time when you want them closer, so that your craftsmanship and your finishing has to be so on point, because that someone's going to literally walk up to your piece and breathe on it because they're going to want to figure out how many layers of that do we have going on, and so mostly they're just creeped out by it because they don't know what's going on or what is the purpose of it. And, then they're like, these weird curls. Wait, no, they're snakes, and it's weird, and no, and so they talk a lot about that, about how many times he had to draw these little faces over and over and over again, and what possesses you to put them there.
Yeah, it's a weird. Well, I mean, it's Dali, so obviously it's weird, but just sort of that. Kids are fascinated by that infinity concept where it just gets smaller and smaller inside of there.
Yeah,
it's fun to think about. Next on the list, maybe for my money, the creepiest artwork of all time is Saturn devouring his son by Goya. Oh man, I think everybody knows this one. Very, very black in the background. And then a giant, I don't know, just creepily painted dude with gross hair and a manic face, and he's eating another human, which is, or I guess they're gods technically, because But anyway, we're missing a head, we're missing an arm, the mouth is open, and we're about to be missing another arm. There's blood all over. It's disgusting and bothersome and creepy, but for whatever reason, kids love it. So.
Yes. And this is one that I just have typically in, I present with like a group of images and they pick this one out and they're like, and that's all I get.
Because it's so weird and so creepy, and kids just don't know how to react to it because it's bothersome especially when you're seeing it for the first time.
But it's a good one when they start to look at, someone inevitably every year wants to do something with mythology for their, portfolio or for a piece or whatever. And so we bring this up, and they're just like, okay, so this forces them to go look up the entire story. And they're like, wait, does that have anything to do with the story? I don't remember what the story is, but then also I don't know who Saturn is. Is this Greek or is this Roman? And then they divulge into this research. And so, or dive into this research. And so, I really like this as a conversation starter, but typically it just takes them a minute because they're like, I don't know what's going on. And then they're, they look at just proportions of Saturn and proportions of the sun. And they're just like, his son is hippie. And, I'm just like, okay. Okay, guys. So then they start to dive a little deeper into what's actually happening. But, this is one of the few pieces that, again, doesn't need a lot to invoke all of these unnerving feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
They have a good example of that.
Yeah, and I usually, when I'm showing it, I like to do kind of a narrative of Goya's life. And we can start with all of those, just beautiful, not religious, but royal court paintings that he did of kings and queens and, nobles and whatever you want to call them. And then, later in life, he just started withdrawing from everyone and he moved up to this hill in the cliffs and then painted his entire house with these dark, disturbing images. And, just talking about this was literally in his bedroom. This painting is in his bedroom. So can you imagine, going to sleep every night? And so we actually usually get into a good discussion on mental health and everything that goes along with that. And so, it's fascinating to kind of look at his life and everything that he's putting together, and how he lived his life and the progression into this dark sort of place and all of the work that went along with that. So that always makes for a good discussion.
Yeah.
Now, next one, I need to ask if you even show this one because it's pretty brutal. It's pretty violent. Artemesia Gentileschi's painting of Judith cutting off the head of Holofernes, where, it's got Judith, she's got the sword, she's got her handmaid, working with her, and they're literally slicing off this guy's head. So, is this one that you show in your classroom?
Yes. And also too, we have a separate art history class and I know that they go through a lot. And so I'm just like, if it can be part of an art history textbook, then it should be able to be, shown in class. Yep. But I always preface it with, just fair warning, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And same thing when you show David or when you show any sculpture or anything that, especially getting into anatomy and figure drawing and what figure drawing traditionally is, or, you know, a lot of my kids go to art school and I'm like, hey, you guys, just so you know, when you get into figure drawing or when we go visit museums, I'm like, don't snicker,
Yes.
uh, don't giggle, because this is how we get to not go places. But yeah, and so I always have to preface it by like, hey, just so you know, this is it's a little much, but this is such an important piece,
Mm-hmm.
and especially, you know, done by a woman. And so we talk about just, and my girls always go insane for it. They're like, yes, queen, yes, you do that, you know. And they just, the boys are always like, okay, wait a minute, hold on here, what is happening? But everybody just comes to a consensus on just her facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
How Judith is just, hey, this is just another day. I need to handle this business. And if you could just hold still for me, this will go a lot quicker. You know, and they just have this entire narrative that they build up, which is great because it just starts an entire conversation about how they're just, you know, taking charge or what happened to get to this point. And so I just love the story that they attach to it. And they seem to overlook the bit of the gore.
Yeah.
Because they love it. They absolutely love just the fact that she's just going to town and she's like, you know, ew, this is kind of gross, but, you know, you got to go, buddy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So they love it. Obviously, my girls love it a little bit more. They see it as a power piece.
Yes.
Like, that's not chopping heads.
It definitely is. And, you know, I always show, you know, Caravaggio's painting of the same subject where, you know, he did a Judith cutting off the head of Holofernes, same story. But Gentileschi's painting is just so much better in every way. And so, you know, my kids are like, wait, so the women painted better than the men? And I'm like, well, not,
yes.
you know, like, yes, but, and so, you know, we just talk about different time periods, different understandings, different techniques, you know, and all the things that go into that. But that's their big takeaway. And like you said, I love doing the storytelling aspect of it, where I have the kids come up with, you know, what they think is happening. And then I will tell them the actual story of, you know, Holofernes is going to, you know, absolutely massacre like all of Judith's people. And so here's what she did. And, you know, just telling the whole story going along with that. And so it's kind of fun because a lot of times like they can come close to what the story actually is. So that's a fun one to, I don't know if I should describe it as fun because there's nothing fun about painting, but it always makes for really interesting discussions. And, you know, I mean, that's what we're going for. All right. So just one last painting here that I want to talk about because, you know, you and I always go way too deep on all of these paintings and talk too long. But Frida Kahlo, you know, she's got she's like Dali, where there's a lot of just weird, wild, fascinating stuff that we could do. But I love the two Fridas painting, you know, where they're sitting side by side, beautiful background with like the sky, the clouds, and then the two hearts beating, the veins going back and forth. And then, you know, the figure on the right is dressed, you know, blue, green, just fairly traditional. And then the figure on the left is dressed all in white, the second Frida, and she has the scissors, she has the vein cut, the blood dripping all over that white dress. And, you know, that's another one that kind of lends itself to a lot of great storytelling and having the kids try and figure out, you know, what is Frida trying to tell us with, you know, this painting. So like, what do those discussions look like in your classroom with this one?
Yeah, this is one of, typically I use Frida as essay pieces when they have to do a longer write. We do a lot of quick writes in class, but when they have to do a longer essay, and specifically this one, and we got a chance to see it. It came to the DMA here in Dallas. And we all dressed up as Frida Kahlos because we were trying to break a world record. I don't think we got there, but we got to be all Fridas, boys That's included, awesome. Which is great inclusion. And they got to see it up close. And I mean, first of all, the piece is huge, but this talks a lot about just her inability to reconcile the Mexican side and the German side of herself. And once they first talk about what they feel the piece could be about, and then once they hear the story, it's so relatable to them because everybody has multiple things that they're trying to mend together with themselves. And so they really, really go for it. But they're definitely unnerved by the blood. And they're just like, why is the heart broken? Why is the vein, again, Grey's Anatomy, thank you. They're like, she has it clamped, but it's still bleeding. That is not okay. And I'm like, how do y'all know that these are clamps, but okay? And they talk a lot about just how sometimes you try and you try and you try to fix something, and even the thing that's supposed to fix it doesn't fix it. And I remember reading that on several essays, and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, this is good. So this is definitely one of the pieces that gives them liberty to go a little further, because she's so recognizable, but also because there's two versions of everybody, whether you mean for it to be like that or not. You're different with different groups of friends, you're different with your parents. And so it's so relatable to them that they can really dive deep, but they're very unnerved with the hearts, specifically. And then the stormy sky, it doesn't bode well for them either. They're just like, I don't know, it just makes me a little nervous.
It does, but good work makes you feel it. Like, that's what I always tell my kids. That's what I tell, my own kids at home. Like, good stories and good works of art, like, they make you feel all of the emotions. And so this is one that most definitely does that. So it's always good to talk about and to look at. So cool. All right. Well, Jen, thank you. This has been a super fun discussion. I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can talk to you again soon.
Of course. Thank you so much.
All right. Now, we actually had a couple more artworks on the list, but since Jen and I always seem to nerd out about art history, we went a little long on all of our discussion. So I hope that what we said can maybe give you some ideas for works you may want to use in your classroom and some ideas on how to present them. So the list one more time for those of you taking notes at home. Van Gogh's Head of a Skeleton with the Burning Cigarette. Rembrandt's Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp, Salvador Dali's The Face of War, Goya's Saturn Devouring His Son, Artemesia Gentileschi's Judith Cutting Off the Head of Holofernes, and Frida Kahlo's Two Fridas. And the two that did not make the cut today are Caravaggio's Medusa. Look that up and you'll see just a decapitated Medusa head with this crazed look in her eyes and all of these snakes for hair that just fit right in with everything else we were talking about today. And also Francis Bacon's Study After Velázquez's Portrait of Pope Innocent X. Just look that up, and it's a little disturbing, especially the first time you see that. So, my kids are always into that one as well. So anyway, like I said, feel free to look those up if you're looking for a couple more artworks to show this week. Cause, as we all know, nothing celebrates Halloween better than some of the most creepy examples you can find from art history. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. We've been getting a lot of questions lately about the master's degree and AOEU, so next week those questions will kind of guide our podcast discussion. We'll talk to you then.